Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. It was in April last year that Franklin Templeton, the American giant with assets of over $700 billion under its management worldwide, suddenly announced the closure of 6 debt mutual fund schemes in India. At risk was 30,000 crores belonging to over 3 lakh investors who had invested their funds in these 6 debt mutual fund schemes of Templeton. And what was also at risk was a potential possible contagion in the sector. After all, investors had already been burning their fingers by the collapse of banks and the NBFCs in the country. Templeton said that the closure of these 6 mutual funds was in the best interest of investors according to it, and it said that all will soon be well. The sudden closure of these mutual fund schemes meant that investor money was going to be blocked for an uncertain period, and there would also be uncertainty about what would they finally realize. Would they really get their capital back? Would they get some kind of a return on it, or would they lose all their money? As we said, some kind of a panic set amongst the investors completely. All was certainly not well with Templeton. This kind of a sudden closure of a mutual fund scheme with no notice means something was brewing, and finally a dead end would have come and the closure was imminent. A prima facie look at the portfolios of these 6 mutual fund schemes, which were virtually disbanded by Templeton, showed that there had been gross mismanagement of funds by its top executives, and that there were also potential chances of siphoning of funds away by these top executives of Templeton. In other words, there was fraudulent transaction that took place in these mutual funds. The top high-profile fund management team of Templeton had clearly invested in unlisted, illiquid and uncertain securities. Uncertain in terms of returns, uncertain even in terms of exit from those investments. When this sudden closure of these mutual fund schemes took place by Templeton, of course the investors cried foul, and so did the authorities. But Templeton was unmoved. Templeton said that the closure of these mutual fund schemes by it is in the best interest of the investors, and that it will redeem the funds by way of a managed sale and pay off all the investors. It also very clearly denied that there had been any kind of a mismanagement or violation of any kind of laws or regulations in the conduct and management of these mutual funds. And it assured the investors that investment had been made in high quality securities and that there was enough liquidity available in order to redeem the investments. All this was of course contrary to the facts of the case. Common sense said that if investments were made in high profile securities and if enough liquidity was available to redeem the investments, then where was the need for Franklin Templeton to close these 6 debt mutual fund schemes? As we said, authorities and agencies and investors were not convinced. It was very clear that all was not well in the matter of management of the mutual fund schemes by Templeton. Irrespective of the claims of Templeton that there was no misconduct in the management of those funds, irrespective of Templeton saying that rules and regulations were not violated, and irrespective of Templeton claiming that transactions were bona fide, the authorities and agencies immediately began investigating the affairs of Templeton and the conduct of its top executives. Reports say that very recently SEBI and the Enforcement Directorate have filed cases against Templeton and its top executives, and cases have been filed on charges of commitment of fraudulent transactions and violations of rules and regulations to the detriment of the investing public. SEBI's findings say that Templeton has violated the SEBI regulations by committing fraudulent and unfair trade practices in the management of these funds, and that according to it, Templeton and its executives are liable for penalty, prosecution and disgorgement of all the illegal gains that were made by violating its rules and regulations. An audit finding of SEBI says that top executives of these funds and their related entities and individuals, they withdrew large sums of money before the closure of these funds was announced. The amount involved is 50 crores plus. It's very clear that top executives have misused insider sensitive information and they've ensured that they pulled out their monies before the funds were closed, and that is a stark violation of SEBI regulations. It is an unfair trade practice. It's a fraudulent act. All this, of course, benefited these top executives. It is the investing public that trusted Templeton, which was left high and dry. The report of Enforcement Directorate, the Enforcement Case Information Report, or the equivalent of the ED FIR as it is called, is far more extensive in its charges. ED says that key management persons of Templeton have clearly misused information that they had. Sensitive information was misused and funds were withdrawn much before anybody else was able to do. The second charge of ED is that investment rules were flouted by these top executives such that they invested the public savings in illiquid, unlisted and loss-making investments. Again, a violation of law and a fraudulent transaction in itself. Further, it says that those investments which had a put option such that the funds could have redeemed those assets, those investments whenever they wanted, put options were not exercised, despite the fact that in some investments that were made where there was a put option, there was a rating downgrade and the fund should have exercised the put option and pulled out the money. Despite that, these fund managers, these top executives did not exercise that put option. It cites the case of investments made by these funds in Reliance Infrastructure and Reliance Big Private Limited, where there was a put option, where the securities of Reliance, their rating was downgraded and the put option should have been exercised and investment should have been withdrawn. ED says the top executives did not do that. It further alleges that investments were made by these executives in non-worthy investments, and surprisingly, where investments were made in worthy investments, they were sold off by these funds at a sharp discount, which is just the opposite of what they should have done. According to the ED, by virtue of this misconduct, top executives, trustees of these mutual funds, they made monetary gains for their personal benefits. In other words, there was fraudulent transactions, there was also corruption that took place in the management of these fund schemes by Templeton. Amidst such serious allegations, such serious findings, such serious charges of the Enforcement Directorate, the ED in its ECIR has named the President, the CEO, the CMO, the top fund managers of Templeton to be accused in this serious case. ED says that it is collecting and collating more information and data in order to build a cash trail so as to establish the money laundering and siphoning of money that took place. And when we talk of siphoning of funds, let's be clear, siphoning does not generally get done by the junior executives. When large-scale siphoning takes place, it means the accused are going to be the top managers, the accomplices are going to be the top executives of any institution. And that is what is the finding of ED in the case of Franklin Templeton also. The larger picture that emerges according to us is that the entire banking and financial sector of India has been infected with what we call integrity deficit. It is because of this integrity deficit that institutions collapse, fraudulent transactions and huge financial crimes take place. We saw that happening in the case of banks where Yes Bank, Lakshmi Vilas Bank, PMC Bank, ICICI Bank, IDBI Bank and other public sector banks were found to be infected with integrity deficit. We saw that in the case of NBFCs where ILFS and DHFL collapsed. We saw that in the case of broking fraternity where Karvi was found to have committed serious crimes. And now we are seeing that in the case of mutual funds, which is these 6 schemes which were closed by Franklin Templeton on account of fraudulent practices that took place there. To us, whenever these kind of incidents happen, the blame always lies with the top management, and it is imperative that these top executives are punished. Unless they are not punished stringently, unless they are not taken to task in the most stringent manner, what will happen is that these kind of incidents will only come back in future, and in future when they come back, the size of the crime will be far bigger and the kind of crime committed will be even more audacious. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing: that news should remain free because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here, you can be our supporter by paying Rs 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying Rs 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our Super Supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.